Hello crafters and welcome back to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from DeeZinesByD and today I have these two very simple but pretty cards to share with you today that have the Easter spring theme, and I hope that these definitely get your creative juices flowing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the products that we're going to be using today. So these are the products we're using today. They are Hero Arts. The first one here is Flowery Vines. You've probably seen this before. It is very pretty and is just like a one-piece large die. Then we've got the Rabbit Pear. So you get two bunnies here and a carrot if you want to use that. And then we've also got the Happy Easter stamp and cut extra large set of stamps and dies. Now I did want to use the sentiment dies at first, but they are so large and took up a bit too much space, so I just went ahead and used the stamps for my cards today. So before I got started, what I did here was some die cutting. So I used the Flowery Vines die and I cut it twice out of white cardstock, plain white, and then I've got some like pastel pink and pastel blue, and I cut it once out of each of those colors. Now keep in mind that's a one-piece die, so you will have to do some paper piecing if you want to add color the way I'm doing, or you could just color it in if that works for you, or ink blend. Now I do have some couple ink pads there that I'm going to be using to add a little bit of shading to the flowers. Now keep in mind on these vines, I actually thought there were a lot more flowers than there are, but there's only about 4, and it just like it has a very simple look to it, which is really nice. So you know, that also lends itself to mass production. These cards are very simple, so if you wanted to make a whole bunch of them, you could play around with where the sentiments go, or where you want to put your bunnies, or how you want to organize things on your card. But in general, this would make a really quick give a good idea for a simple card for mass production. Maybe you don't want to add color in the way that I'm doing here. Maybe you just want to color it, or just use plain cardstock. You don't have to add the extra shading. That'll make it even faster. But I did want to add the shading because I like to have a little bit of depth and dimension if I can get it wherever I can. So I did use some cherry blossom ink on the pastel pink portion of the vines, and then I'm using some sky blue on the pastel blue. Now you'll see they have a little bit of a deeper color, and I'm only adding the color to like the bottom part of the flowers so that they create like a two-tone or a variation in tone, which really helps in giving it its extra depth. Now I'm also using some Copic markers here. I'm using RV32 and RV25, or actually RV52 for the ear. So this is just the inner portion of the ears on the rabbits. Now keep in mind that these are very plain. I'm only doing the ears and then a little bit on the nose to kind of highlight that. You could do the little cottontail if you wanted to, but I left that white. So there are our bunnies. Now for these vines, we got to do some paper piecing here. So now I'm going to grab a small pair of scissors and I'm just going to cut off those 4 flowers one by one and attach them to the white vines. Now you could attach them flat, meaning you could just use some liquid glue, but as I said, I like to add dimension where I can, so I'm actually going to grab some really small foam squares. These are called micro squares, and along with all the other supplies used in today's video, it's linked in the description below, so you can go ahead and check those out. I mean, there's tons of squares in this foam set, so if you say I think I have one pack and it's lasted me at least 3 to 4 years now, and I'm still not even halfway through the first part, like the first page of it. So I think you get like 2 pages of those micro squares, and they really come in handy. So you'll notice that I am only attaching like a micro square on the portion of the flower that you'll notice that there's some petals that are actually cut from the die, but they're not completely cut loose separate, so you can actually prop those up with the microfoam squares. So that's what I'm doing here, and then on the rest of the flower I'm just adding liquid glue to stick down the color to the white, and that kind of lifts up the petal, and as you can see, it creates beautiful dimension. It looks really pretty. I actually, for this reason alone, wish there were more flowers because it looks really nice in the end. Keep in mind on these cards, we are going to be covering, I think, one of these flowers. So if you wanted to, and I was going to do this, but then I decided just to leave it as is, You could cut that fourth flower and maybe move it elsewhere on the vine so you could still see it and it's not going to be hidden in the background. Or you could just organize your die cuts and your sentiment differently so that you can see all the flowers. This is just how it ended up turning out for me. So you'll notice the one in the center, I didn't prop that up because I knew that was going to be covered. I actually shouldn't have even added the flower, right? I just couldn't do it because I wanted to see what it would look like all together. So I'm doing the exact same thing with the pastel blue flowers. However, I figured I'd show you the difference in dimension. So on the pink one, we've got the micro squares for dimension on the flowers to prop up those extra petals. But on this one, I'm just going to lay them down flat. So it's much simpler. You don't have to mess around too much with the micro squares here and try and get that petal propped up. So this again makes your process easier. So if you're mass producing, you might want to go ahead with this technique so that you're not wasting too much time on every vine and every flower that you add. So those are the two flowers. You can see that it gives you that nice pop of pink and blue, which is what I was going for. Now don't throw away the vines because I will be adding those on in a minute. But before I get to that, I did want to do the sentiments. So I kind of like to make sure I do all the elements, like I create them all first. And that gives me an idea of where I can place them on the card. How big things are compared to other things. Maybe I need to add some extra elements. So that's my general thought process as I put my cards together. So I've got the sentiments from the stamp set and I used Easter blessings here. I like that the Easter is in like a different font, so it really makes this one look pretty. I'm just using some plain old VersaMark sticky embossing ink here. And I did use my anti-static powder tool there on that cardstock. You'll see that that's the same colored cardstock that we used for the vines, for the flowers, right? So we're keeping everything pretty much coordinating here. And then what I did was I added some white embossing powder, and now I'm just going to heat that up and melt that powder to the cardstock here. Now, if you do have a banner die, I was going to actually cut this out in a banner and have it below my rabbits in the center of the card, but I think at the end I decided to make it like a full sentiment strip at the bottom of the card, and that ended up looking really, really good. So for the next sentiment, for the pink cardstock. So again, this is the same cardstock as on the vines, the pink vines. And I'm just stamping this one out. This one says Happy Spring, so it's a little more generic, not completely Easter related. For those of you who don't celebrate Easter, it's a nice spring card with a little bunny. I'm just heating up the white embossing powder. And those are the two strips you see. I fully cut them out there. So moving on, remember I said not to throw away the colored cardstock for the vines. I'm actually going to attach this to the back of the white vines in a little bit of an offset fashion. So just slightly offset so you get a little hint of that pink popping through. And I thought that this just, because the white would have gone on my card, which is also a white card base, it was just a bit too much white on white for me. I wanted to add a little bit more pops of those colors to kind of just enhance the card a little bit. You can again choose not to do this, and then the white kind of just looks like it's embossed on the card base, but it gives a different look. I don't think either looks better than the other. It's just really how you want your card to look in the end. And I have a problem with a lot of white. So this is probably why I added it here, because I was like, oh god, there's only 4 flowers. I need to add more of the color. So if you're good with white, go ahead and just use the white vine. I tend to think something's missing, but that's just me. Okay, so now I've got these two offset with the colored vines in the background. Now I can kind of go ahead and start putting these together. So I'm grabbing the pastel pink one first, and I'm just adding plain old liquid glue to the back of this large die cut, which is absolutely pretty. I love die cuts, like large ones, because you don't have to do too much. They cover up the majority of your card and you can get beautiful cards done in half the time. So I've gone ahead and attached this, and now you can really see that little hint of pink peeking through the sides of the vines. And you'll notice that I positioned it more towards the top of the card, and I did that on purpose so that my sentiment strip would fit at the bottom and I wouldn't be losing too much of the vines. Now you can see I also used the Essential Floral Reflections dies from Spellbinders. This one is basically just to create a backdrop for my white bunnies, because the bunny on the white just really would have gotten lost in those vines and stuff. So I thought that the background here is going to help my bunny stand out. I did use the blue, so I went with the opposing color, the color of the other card, to kind of really make it stand out. And you can see that in the way that I'm positioning it here. I'm trying to get those flowers to kind of fall over top of it rather than covering them up completely, so that it creates a little bit more interest there. And again, that goes with that dimension that I love to add. Now I'm adding the larger bunny here, who's kind of standing up at attention, kind of looking for his Easter eggs there. And then I've got the larger blue Easter blessing sentiment strip to place on the bottom. I'm going to do this with some more foam squares. You could use just a large panel of foam if you wanted to, but I couldn't find mine in that moment in time, so I used the larger square. So this is another set of foam squares that ScrapbookPal carries by 3L, and you get like a page of large squares, I think 2 pages of large squares, and then 2 pages of smaller squares, but they're in between the large and those micro squares. So you get a good variety of sizes to use on your cards. So that card is basically done. You can see I cut off the overhanging bits there so that it fits nicely on the card, that sentiment. And keep in mind, see, I used that blue background for my bunny so that it matches the blue sentiment strip, so that everything, like I said, it goes together nicely. And I find that the blue and the pink really come together really well. If you wanted to, you could add a third color. Like I think that a pastel purple would look really nice. Maybe like a mint green would look pretty. So you could kind of change that up a little bit too if you felt like this was like me and you thought there was just too much white going on here. But like I said, I love the pops of color. It just really makes it look really pretty and stand out. So as you can see on my second card, I'm doing this in the exact same way. The only difference on this card is we have opposite colors and my sentiment strip is a little smaller, which really doesn't change anything. So, oh yeah, and keep in mind that my flowers don't have dimension. So here, the little pink panel is going to cover those up. I can't really get them to flap over the top unless I detach them from the card base. So I've gone ahead and added a pink panel of that Essential Floral Reflections dies from Spellbinders, and now I'm adding the sentiment strip. This time I'm using the smaller foam squares that come in that 3L foam pack, and I'm going to attach the sentiment to the bottom and then cut off the overhanging bits just like I did on the first one. So you'll see that you get 2 versions of these cards, of this card, and you can see how the blue works with a little bit of pink or more blue and less pink. It depends on what you're going for. I think they both look really pretty in their own ways. I love the variation of the 2 rabbits. You could pick which rabbit you like better. Maybe you wanted to stick the carrot in there and you could make the carrot a pastel color too. Who knows? So now that I've got my main cards done, I want to add just a little bit of bling, which is also going to add a little bit more color too. So I've got some Pinkfresh Studio glitter drops here. I'm using the blush on the card that has more blue to kind of bring in more of the pink. And then I'm going to use aqua on the card that has more of the pink to bring in that blue and help those flowers stand out a little bit more. And that's pretty much it for these 2 cards. So you'll see once I've placed down those last few gems here on this final card, I'm pretty much done. These were such a joy to put together. I'm loving getting into the spring and summer feel. I don't know about you, but down here where I am, there's just been so much snow that it feels so nice to make bright and cheery cards. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and everything that I've used, as I mentioned before, is linked in the description below, so you can always check those out in the ScrapbookPal store. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you guys again next time. Bye.